Hello, this is Michael Dean with the Blue Cross Movement for Positive Equality and Dean 2024. For anyone who may be watching this for the first time, this is an attempt to prevent civil war, create unity, and break the monopoly over our lives. As a country, we have a lot to talk about right now, but I don't want to get lost in all the details. There's one crucial element to all this, and it seems to be the key to everything, and I'm going to get right to it. Resources. The struggle for resources began before mankind even existed. It is the deepest root to every problem on our planet. One of the biggest problems associated with the world's resources is manufactured material scarcity. To be clear for everyone, what that means is that circumstances have been made in a way that it appears that there is not enough for everyone. Not only does that create a struggle to acquire resources, but also a desire to have superiority and leverage over resources. Now, you may know this to be true because right now you're probably already thinking of several ways in which there's not enough. Also, that there has to be a competitive wage system because people are lazy. And if they aren't made to compete, then they won't do anything. Just looking at that statement, it's black and white. It's a blanket statement, and it's a this or that tactic, period. An obvious ploy to deceive someone. Actually, these days we do embrace psychological health, and it's fairly well known that people need to have accomplishments to feel good about themselves. Of course, a lot of times that may take some guidance from their elders or community, but usually when people get that feeling of accomplishment, most people get hooked. Otherwise, I would leave the responsibility on leadership if there is a decline in morale, and not the people. So sure, there are still some people that are going to argue with that. So let's take a look at the other side of the coin. Capitalism is doing great right now. Billionaires and corporations are making record profits. But what other numbers are up right now? Suicide, homelessness, mass murder. So if capitalism is working perfectly, and these are the effects that are produced on the ground level, how can we say that that is inspiring people to be ambitious, if not just as a survival mechanism? So hopefully everyone has come to the conclusion that capitalism is not good, and the rhetoric behind it is mostly propaganda. And if not, the plan that I've created will at least prove that there is another way. Honestly, I've been sharing this around for about 2 years now. Most people appreciate the idea and or decide that they would vote for it immediately. Back to resources. Once again, the matter is very simple and usually the root of all our problems. Resources build wealth, wealth builds power, and power builds freedom. If someone wants to truly be free, they have to be backed with the resources to provide for their needs and desires. Almost every war or conflict included a struggle for resources. And if not, they were usually plundered anyway. So as we debate all the laws and intricacies of our society, we fail to unite on a single point that will give the people, the true majority, any power in these matters. And as we have no true power in these matters, we have no true freedom. We have been made as subjects to laws rather than being free people who abide by a social contract. And this goes a little bit deeper than just philosophy. On the 7th draft of the Bill of Rights, changed the term subjects to citizens. I'm not sure if the definition has changed since then, but if we look at the definition of citizen today, we will see that it says a legally recognized subject or national of the state or commonwealth, either native or naturalized. The term for a national is defined as someone who has the irrevocable right to abide in a nation or territory. If we talk to the average American, or even ask ourselves what it means to be a citizen, some of us will say that we are the collective owners of our nation. And I think that that's a definition that we need to talk about. There's a small point I'd like to cover alluding to this matter. It's grammar. We've all heard the term, the pen is mightier than the sword. But let's take a look at that. Right now, if someone mentions the word conspiracy, it usually leaves a bad taste in most people's mouth. Many people don't want to hear it, and they will steer away from anything they believe has to do with a conspiracy. If we take a look at the definition for the word conspiracy right now, it says a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. My understanding of conspiracy was a group of 5 or more people secretly planning to do something, not necessarily good or bad. In our own culture, we actually use every year as we sing Winter Wonderland. Later on, we'll conspire as we dream by the fire. Technically, at this point in our beloved Christmas song, we're plotting to do something harmful to someone. Does that make sense? Of course it doesn't. A group of your friends could conspire to buy you a birthday present or throw you a party. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. But we see the change in the definition, and we see people become superstitious about the word. So now, even though there are good and bad conspiracies unraveling all over the world, we can't talk about any of them because we've put the heebie-jeebies on a word. These could be conversations that would change our world and our lives for the better, but we don't have them. The pen is mightier than the sword. We need to keep in mind that it wasn't just one word, it was a lot of words and a lot of phrases. The majority of them, the meaning has been misconstrued to appropriate it alongside some hidden agenda or a conspiracy. I certainly don't mean to justify every conspiracy or conspiracy theory, as most of them are not. They are just hypotheses, and most of them aren't true. Otherwise, I would urge everyone, as they're making their decisions and reflecting on the terminology that they're familiar with, to do some research, getting back to whether we should be defined as citizens or as the collective owners. If I did a poll in America to vote to change our definition of servitude to our nation from citizens to owners, that would be a landslide vote. So back to the resources again. If someone discovers land with no resources on it, they don't get very excited. And that's because the wealth of land is in its resources. A nation's wealth is in its resources. If we are the collective owner, we should be tied to the wealth of our nation. Right now, corporations are paid trillions of dollars in subsidies to run their businesses. Companies like Shell and Exxon will pay for a lease to drill oil, but the subsidies they receive far outweigh paying the lease. Is really just a back and forth exchange. Also, once they have the lease, they are allowed to deplete the sources completely unchecked. They lobby our politicians to make this possible, which is basically legalized bribery, and it gives them access to almost unlimited wealth, the wealth of our nation. Since petroleum companies are already running a profitable business, the tax subsidies amount to more profit. If someone or something is profiting from something else, then that something is a resource. So we are not only being robbed of our nation's wealth and a possible national inheritance, we ourselves are also being used as a resource, which is not very nice to say the least. Though that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that they make their original profits by selling their product of our resources back to us. So they take our tax dollars, they deplete our resources unmetered, and sell them back to us for a total profit scheme. With a business model like that, you can see how corporate profits continue to rise. I don't want to talk about how we give tax subsidies to every corporate industry and how that is all astronomically wasteful. What I do want to talk about is how we can turn the tables on that peacefully and create a new type of economy that is prosperous for everyone and not just those with enough money to take advantage of it. So obviously, the corporations are directly attached to the wealth of our nation. We need to break that attachment and create one for ourselves. We can reroute the tax subsidies back to individuals and small businesses. So it's pretty clear that the corporations are directly attached to the wealth of our nation. But before I get into the details on that, I want to talk about one more thing: our independence. There are a lot of people who are going to celebrate Independence Day this year, and there are a lot of people who are not. It doesn't really matter. If I'm clearly explaining how corporations are controlling our country and exploiting even us as a resource, and not only that, but we are also put in a position to be dependent on their products, can we really say that we have the independence that we claim we do? I know that sounds strange, and I don't want to lose you. So let me cover a subject to drive my point home: fuel prices. There's a lot of headlines about fuel prices and fuel taxes. There's a lot of conversation and debate about it. But there's one thing that we don't hear a lot of, and that's talk about alternative fuels and biofuels. Not only are they easy to make and actually much less toxic than petroleum fuel, it's actually easy for a farmer to set up their own fuel production. We have farmers who do it right now, and if our government would use our tax dollars to subsidize some kind of farmers' fuel conglomerate across our country, not only would it provide an endless income for those farmers and reduce the amount of pollution we create, it would substantially reduce our fuel prices and dependency on petroleum. There's also the option to mass produce water decomposition units to be put in any vehicle that could compensate the fuel with hydrogen. This is something that can be dangerous, but is done regularly by people who are not certified technicians. In some cases, these hydrogen modules can double or triple your vehicle's mileage. These are things that could be done at any time, but obviously lobbying outweighs the needs of the common man. I'm sure we could all agree that having access to these alternative fuels would give each of us a greater independence, and to our nation as a whole. But also, it's not like that with just petroleum products. It's like that with food, clothing, and pretty much everything. I think that would be okay if we were all small businesses. But the fact that we are all just people under a handful of corporate monopolies, we are absolutely dependent on them. Most of us have no startup wealth, so we're dependent on banks and financial institutions. And I could go on and on. But the point is that our independence is not very independent. So let's talk about a possible solution to that. Of course, it's not just independence, and it's not just America or American history. It is the single longest battle on earth, the quest for resources and wealth, and that has not changed to this day. A small group of people hoard the wealth and resources of our world, and everyone else are only accessories to that. So it is a historically monumental feat to break the monopoly that the wealthy have over the common people, otherwise known as the status quo. That is the conspiracy that was mentioned earlier, and that is the conspiracy that we need to talk about. Where I think the status quo conspiracy is going. Most people are aware of the WEF at this time, the World Economic Forum. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a minute to summarize. It appears that the financial elites of the world have devised the perfect model of exploitation that can be applied to every person on the planet. It sounds a little crazy, but this is what it looks like. There are dozens of documentaries about banks and other entities going into underdeveloped countries and exploiting them for their resources. What happens is the people are usually desperate and in need, and the banks come in and offer them relief in exchange for resources. These agreements usually have near impossible terms, and the people are unable to meet those terms, and eventually the banks or other entities end up nearly owning the countries and all their resources. So it appears that they've developed a system to where they will bankrupt as many people as possible and subject them to mercy loans, which are not very merciful. From there, it would lead to fewer and fewer people owning anything and having to rent or finance everything they will ever need. Since we already have to pay fees to withdraw our own money or write our own checks, or even to cash a check at the bank that it was issued from, we are fairly acclimated to this banking system already. Really, the only thing left to do is for them to bankrupt as many people as possible. If that were to continue, within a generation or so, the entire world would be divided into two classes: owners and non-owners. So here we are again, back at the term owner. Very well seems that the grammar and the actions taking place in the world are pushing the common man further away from any ownership and the resources that provide wealth, power, and freedom. In my estimations, the best way to counter this will be for the common people to unite and declare our mineral rights and an attachment to the wealth of our nation. The first objection most will hear is socialism. But let's look at that word. Socialism is essentially anything that is paid for and governed by the people. Supposedly, these are supposed to be to benefit the people and their society. Police are socialism. The military is socialism. The entire government is socialism. Once again, the pen is mightier than the sword. The word socialism has lost its definition and it has gained an ideology and a counter-ideology. But let's just put that thought aside for a minute and take a look at what I'm talking about. So right now, every one of us has a meter on every pipe or wire coming into our homes. And the basis for this idea is to have a meter on every pipe and quarry coming out of the ground. I certainly mean the depletion on a corporate level and not on an individual level. If we have commercial companies coming in and raking off the tops of mountains, they need to be paying for the depletion of those resources. Not only will they begin to pay their fair share, we will also redirect our subsidies to localized efforts and maybe something like that farmers' fuel conglomerate I mentioned earlier. Establishing mineral rights and paying a national inheritance to each of our citizens will effectively reverse the flow of the IRS. Saving money on tax subsidies, we will eliminate income taxes and homestead property taxes. We will also establish data and electronic user rights. Data has been touted as the new oil and the single greatest global product. They've said there is more money in data than oil, and I think it's time we start taxing those entities as well. Otherwise, we will give people complete control over their data and devices, creating a metering program that will track all data collection to be taxed or for individual profit. Taxing data will give us more than enough money to afford health care and education for all, and install serious upgrades to our infrastructure, including completely self-sufficient cities and organic gardening and orchards incorporated into all new infrastructure deals. There may be another conditioned response occurring right now: material scarcity. Once again, material scarcity is a fabrication. Right now, we could be pushing subsidies to farmers to grow hemp, which grows fast and tall, uses little water, and no pesticides in most cases. We could plant up to 1 billion acres right now that will add 11 trillion pounds of raw material to our annual domestic output. That would create a raw material and economic boom that would heal our country's economy, drive down the costs in every industry and the price of living as a whole, as well as reduce our dependency on oil and help us to clean our environment and eliminate plastics. I want to make a side note real quick. Going back to our dependency to this system. If you're watching this and it's not 2040 yet, you should be able to go and ask an elder if they remember the saying, if you have a pair of hemp overalls, you have a pair for life. That's because hemp is one of the strongest natural fibers on the planet, and hemp clothing would last you a lifetime. I'm sure everyone is aware if you buy a pair of jeans in a store today, it will break down pretty quick, probably won't last a year, leading us to purchase dozens of more products than we would have had to otherwise. What I'm saying here is if we didn't have to spend so much time to make so much money to buy so many products that were designed to fail, we would have all that time or money. We could spend more time enjoying our lives the way we choose, rather than being completely strapped to this corporate profits system. So basically, this is like saying, what if there were 12 less billionaires in America, but everyone else were as free as a billionaire? And this isn't saying that those 12 people won't exist. It just means that they won't have quite as much money. It doesn't mean that Jeff Bezos would not have afforded his $500 million yacht. It just means that he would have needed to seek out a little more investment help to start up his space company. I don't think that that world sounds quite as bad as all the corporate propaganda leads us to believe it would be without capitalism. Let me give you an example of what that would look like. Imagine we have all this done, mineral and data rights, we're building self-sufficient cities, we're well into our raw material and economic boom. We've eliminated income taxes and homestead property taxes, and all your essential needs are taken care of. At this point, if you wanted to stay home and make candles and make a small business out of it, save money to take trips backpacking around the world, you can freely do that without having to worry about losing your home or not having food or utilities when you return. You might be someone who enjoys making crafts or teaching. You can easily make a business out of whatever it is that you enjoy doing because you will not be stressed about the financial burdens that come along with doing so. All your essentials in life are taken care of. You are free. You can do as you please. You could live your entire life and never set an alarm clock if you wanted. And we should expect that some people will do that. Also, we should expect that there will be go-getters out there making things happen and getting things done. As a matter of fact, we should absolutely expect a happy and productive society. So let me take a minute to make an important note about this real quick. There's a lot of talk around the campfire about America is over. Most people are saying they're ready to burn it all down and start over. But what is it? The decisions that we're making today are going to have more of an effect on our children's children than they will on us. So if the decision is to burn it all down, we're only burning down our present. We're burning down our children's future. I'm not one for quoting scripture, but there's a good verse that's applicable right now, and it's Proverbs 13:22. The good leave an inheritance to their children's children. If your plan is to burn it down or fight it out, I'm quite certain you are ruling yourself outside that definition of good. What we should try to recognize here is that there's a lot of energy built up. And the smartest thing that humanity can do is capture that energy and redirect it for the benefit and prosperity of all people. Right now, we absolutely have that opportunity. As a matter of fact, the only thing that's stopping us doing it tomorrow is us. We do not need our government's permission if we all agree. I want to bring up one more thing before I finish. There are two words that we don't hear from our leadership lately, and that's a bit disturbing for me. Domestic tranquility. If you Google the preamble to the United States Constitution, you will find what I believe to be the true definition of a United States patriot. I don't want to get into all the details and definitions of each term, but I do recommend that everybody take a little time to do so at some point. I do want to make a quick note of the defining terms, which are justice, domestic tranquility, common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. You can kind of tell already that has a liberty and justice for all feel to it. There are no terms of division or discrimination. Justice and domestic tranquility are the first two definitive terms. Just reading that lets me know that our forefathers held psychological health in a greater respect than our current leadership does. And in my definition of patriotism, it struck me in my heart to create a peace treaty for America, and I did so based off of those definitive terms. Basically, I'm proposing that we are in a time of unprecedented misfortunes, and to create this extra turbulence poses a threat to the peace and tranquility of our society and should otherwise be deemed reckless. Also recognizing that the people are completely divided and that pursuing these interests is clearly a public threat. For the sake of domestic tranquility, I propose that the Supreme Court roll back its recent decisions on Roe v. Wade and in exchange add a constitutional amendment declaring that the United States will forever maintain national independence from joining a one-world government or assigning to a global currency. That would be an exchange that aligns with the interests of the Christian conservative community and give relief to most other citizens. If agreed upon, those changes would be made immediately and no further changes to highly divisive matters would be made until after the 2024 presidential election. Both parties would agree to do so to maintain domestic tranquility and that it would be recognized by all citizens to observe a time of peace until a new president is selected. So the purpose of me going through that is to exemplify that peace and tranquility should remain our primary goals. The reason I wanted to take the time to make this example is that some of the people that realize the things I'm saying to be true will become angry. But I'm not here to incite your anger. And I'm not here to rile everybody up so that we can destroy the best chance that we have to provide the best possible future for our children. I do hope you stay angry and motivated, but I hope everyone will move in peace. There's no need to damage anything. Rather, look around at the world as if you are about to own everything. If we can put our differences aside long enough, we can establish this foundation for a future of remarkable possibilities and the prosperity of all people. If we do so, I believe on that day we can say that we have established true independence for every American citizen, and that will truly be a day to celebrate. While you're considering these things, I hope that you won't just consider how you feel about it personally, but I hope you will consider your children, your friends' children, all of their children, and so on. Because whatever choice we make right now, it will be for them also. Maybe we will have to ask ourselves if choosing vengeance and burning it all down is worth more than trying to find at least a small piece of common ground and preserving the future for those who certainly deserve one. And if we continue to allow things to go the way they are, well, we could probably assure that those children will never have the independence that I'm speaking of. Most of them may never own anything. But the choice is yours. Please choose wisely, and please keep domestic tranquility in your daily vocabulary. If you've listened objectively to what I've had to say here, please give it careful consideration and also be open to sharing it with people whether you agree completely with the idea or not. Throughout the last few years, many people have lost all hope. Some of them don't know that there are any possibilities for our world. A few of them have come across my campaign and admitted that they were happy when they saw my plan. Not so much that this is absolutely going to be the world's saving grace, but just so they knew that there are possibilities for us to turn this around was enough to lift their spirits. You could possibly do that for someone by sharing this. Otherwise, if these proposals are something that you agree with and would vote for, I hope that you absolutely will share the links to this YouTube channel and the videos so that more people can be inspired or at least have a little bit of faith restored. Thank you for your time and listening patiently. I understand that this is a lot of information and not necessarily easy to digest. I hope that I've laid everything out reasonably enough that it will make sense to most people. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. A special thank you to all the subscribers and everyone who's already on board. You are the fuel in the tank. My sincere gratitude to you all. Please stay safe, stay free, and stay peaceful. Thank you very much.